Rick, how are you?
Hey, good. Good morning, Keith. I'm fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, thank you. I want to do a follow-up to a podcast I did maybe a month or two ago. And this podcast title is called Let Go and Allow What Comes. A month or two ago, I shared about my cousin, and we grew up very, very close. And we, for years, and then his mom passed away, who was one of my favorite aunts when I was a kid, and we had some miscommunication, and I didn't go back for the funeral, and he was hurt by that. And so we didn't talk for several years, and I was aware of my heart breaking over that. I was fine, my conscious self, but I was aware of my heart breaking over that because we were so close. And a month or two ago, he was in town with his son for a basketball tournament, and he reached out to me with just a little text that just said, "Hey Keith, how are you?" That was it. And we hadn't talked in years after several attempts of me trying to connect with him. And that's the letting go part, that despite my efforts in trying to apologize to him, he was not open to it at the time. And so I let go, and I continued to, when I thought of him, to think of him not with sadness, but with just love and gratitude for the time that we had when we were kids. So fast forward, he comes out here, we reconnect. He apologizes, I apologize. We have this great connection, and without saying it, we made a commitment through, our energy, that we were going to stay connected. And every week since, he has called me or texted me to see what's going on with me, how I'm doing, and everything like that. So earlier this week, my mom texted me and told me that his dad passed, who I knew and had a great deal of respect for. So I immediately, unlike last time, I immediately called him and I got his voicemail. And then I got that it was full, and I replied with a text. And so, and I was thinking, he called me back the next day and just said, "Hey, Keith, how you doing? Hope you're doing well." Uh, I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yep, I'm doing great." I mean, his dad was 75 years old. He said, he died peacefully. It was unexpected because just, 2 weeks ago, he was doing, cutting the grass for the church, which is like 3 acres, and that Tennessee humidity and heat. And he was out there doing that. So it was a surprise, but he's very peaceful when he went. And Mark didn't think it was going to be this close, but during the last week, he was telling Mark about who to trust, who not to trust, where his important papers were, who he wanted speaking at the funeral, and who he didn't want speaking at the funeral. So Mark was like, man, he was great. Like he gave me all the instructions. I didn't have to figure anything out. So we had a lot of laughs, and we just talked about some fun memories of his father. And then Mark proceeded to tell me that I said, "Is there anything I can do?" I said, "Do you need me to come back?" And he said, "No, we're going to have a virtual option. So, you just attend, if you want to attend a funeral virtually, great. If you have something else that you can't do that, no problem." And what was amazing about the way that he said it is that there was no passive aggressive behavior in it. There was no hidden agenda. There was no leftover resentment or hurt or pain. He really meant it. And that was just an amazing gift, because some people say, no, don't worry about it, but really they want you worrying about it. They want you to still pay for any perceived transgression from the past. And that wasn't that. Like this gift that he gave me with these options was great, but there was a bigger gift, and that there was nothing but unconditional love in our relationship. Like that feeling, that affinity had been restored. So as I was driving to work later that day, that afternoon, and this was yesterday when we talked, I was driving to work. I had to, get to Mayo for a 1 o'clock meeting. And I was just thinking about that and just observing my heart feel, what had happened earlier in the morning, in which he had just been so kind. And so I sent him a text, and this comes with letting go, which I did initially. when he was disappointed or hurt uh, with how I showed up or not meeting his expectations of how I should show up when his mom died, of letting that go and being okay with maybe, that part of our relationship had come to an end, but being grateful for the experiences that we did have during childhood and a lot of our adulthood. So letting go part and then being okay with what comes. And so I sent him a text yesterday as I had to pull over on my drive to work, just overcome with emotion. And what I shared with him, I'll just read it to you. I said, Mark, thank you for the conversation this morning. Thank you for your kindness and grace. It has bothered me deeply that I let you down when your mom passed. Our reconnection a few months ago and shared apologies meant the world to me. When I called yesterday, I wanted you to know that I'm here for you this time. Thank you for being kind and gracious as you listen and let me know that my call and text were more than enough. As you get the details on how to attend the virtual service for your dad, please share them with me. I love you. That's something that I may have thought before the practice, but I wouldn't have communicated it to him. And there was no expectation of how he might respond. But this whole idea of being unattached to what happens, Rick, was first introduced to me by you. And I just want to thank you for that gift to just love without any kind of expectation of what comes back your way, give without any need for reciprocity, and just serve the moment in front of you. And I just want to thank you for that. And thank you for just being this unconditional friend for me so that I can show up that way for others. And I love you. And I'm just so grateful that I'm having these kinds of experiences in my life and allowing like consciousness to flow through me.
Well, gosh, you're welcome, Keith. You're giving me way too much credit. I think you realized on your own what that relationship that was so important to you meant when it was lost for that period of time. And you were the one who took the bull by the horns and decided to patch it up and make it work. But can you imagine the difference between the experience you just related and what would have happened if you didn't have any contact with him after mom died? So there you have a situation where mom passed, you did nothing, you didn't go to the funeral, you created this distance, and then his dad dies, and there's nothing in between mom and dad dying. Can you imagine the difference between that experience and what you've just related?
Yeah. Wow.
And isn't that something to take into account for your life? Look at the difference between how it turned out or what your experience was yesterday, pulling over with that overwhelming feeling of love and appreciation and sorrow and grief and all of the human things that emotion leads us to, as opposed to being cold and forgetful and not being interested in the other person. It just goes to reflect that you started out by saying in that email to him or text to him, I'm sorry. And I think once we do that, once we let go of the idea that we have to be right, even if we are right, sometimes it's important just to let the other person know that I'm sorry about the way that I presented my thoughts, or I'm sorry about the way that this has progressed and I'm partly responsible for that or completely responsible for it. But once we get to the apology stage where we're giving up, hanging on to being right, all kinds of things open up for us, all kinds of things. It's the same kind of mechanism, I think, that happens to us psychologically when we give up the idea of having to take credit for something.
Mm.
Because once you start taking credit, it becomes more about your ego wanting to show the world what a great person you are, as opposed to doing the deed that had inherent power and purpose when you did it. So I want to acknowledge you for admitting to your cousin that you had dropped the ball, but more importantly, for you insisting and following through with being consistent about contacting him after his mom died, so that you had this kind of foundation for when his dad passed, you were there for him. And I'll tell you something, one last little thing, and that is that I'll bet you that made a big difference in how he was able to handle the grief that came
Mm.
naturally from his dad dying. The fact that you were there when you weren't before. We underestimate the power of who we are to other people. We do that all the time. if we knew how much we meant to other people, think how differently we would behave. So I want to acknowledge you for all of that. What wonderful lessons today.
Wow, thank you, Rick. I love you, and thank you for being a guide and a teacher. In our relationship, I really appreciate you. I love you, and thank you for today.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks for that heartfelt share. That's it's not easy to do. Thanks, buddy. I love you.
I love you.